It's no wonder we have a globally declining birth rate. Majority of the population, including myself, can barely even afford a one-bedroom apartment in this current economy. Having kids on top of that would be nothing short of a death sentence. Both house prices have risen exponentially over the last couple of years, but wages have remained stagnant. It's gotten to the point that I've learned to just accept the fact that I will most likely never be able to buy a house of my own or even have kids. It's just depressing getting up to go to work every morning knowing that your future is bleak, no matter how hard you work. That's the funniest part of searching for a job right now. Companies want young and dumb to burn through. They don't realize the next generation is tiny compared to millennials because so many of us couldn't afford to have kids. Colleges are starting to realize it right now though. Why don't you have kids? I want to retire. Combine with the fact that fertility issues have been increasing and the cost of fertility treatment. Even if you are able to have a house with space, it's still difficult. And once you have said baby, cost of daycare is as much as some people's mortgages. Enslaved society. Saw a discussion on LinkedIn of all places where it was about the cost of going back to the office. Someone mentioned cost of childcare as it wasn't mentioned in the article. There were people flaming the guy that it was his choice to have children and have an on-site job. I really wonder what the point is of having children if less and less things are geared to the parents being able to have children and a decent life. Used to be, more kids was financially beneficial. Nowadays it's the opposite. The result is inevitable. Same. We've been priced out of existence. I work my ass off to pay $2,000 in rent knowing full well that I'll struggle to have food to eat for the month. If I get sick, I go into debt. Life isn't supposed to be this hard. Our entire society is a scam. It's time to get angry about it. I've been saying the same shit on Reddit for years. There are members of the Supreme Court that want to outlaw birth control. They are being bribed by billionaires who need a constant cheap supply of labor. Their labor supply is currently dwindling and they are pissed about that. Money needs to circulate, not be hoarded. These dirty bastards are quite literally killing everyone else with greed. I'm almost 35 and just got my first house a year ago. Now that my eggs are dying every day, my partner and I have discussed children, but the thing is I'd barely get any maternity leave and wouldn't be paid fully for it. Giving birth is expensive even with insurance. WTF would we do if I was out on bed rest? Had a preemie? How do we pay for childcare? Like the logistics are a nightmare because there is no support for parents. Same. I can't have kids because I am just a middle-class person that knows my future is bleak. It's hard to keep up with groceries, and ever-increasing cost of rent and vehicle maintenance costs. The only reason why the birth rate is even a concern is because the rich demand more slave labor. Average Joe doesn't care if there's less people. Less people should mean more resources to go around. But the greed of the rich is unending and relentless. They want us poor, compliant, and in vast numbers to feed their machine. Inflation is one of numerous ways the bourgeoisie screws workers. Them have kids. Us you gonna pay for it? Them know that's your responsibility. Us then fuck you. Them shocked Pikachu face. Seriously. Fuck them. This is a personal choice. If someone can only just barely afford to care for themselves, adding a child to that would be reprehensibly irresponsible. And trying to guilt, pressure or force the have-nots into breeding the next generation of slave labor is just fucking disgusting. If they want more kids, they can fucking have them. Having a child regardless of my circumstances is a literal death sentence to me. Imagine if we had a direct democracy and voted for people like Bernie, who actually give a shit about the working class. Never been a better time in history to be sterile. I'm not cruel enough to want kids. The highest birth rates are in poorer countries and the lowest birth rates are in wealthy countries, like Japan and South Korea. Biggest impacts on birth rate are education of women and availability of birth control. But I agree with you that it's not enticing to raise kids in the US when living paycheck to paycheck. It's time for a new labor movement. Our great-grandfathers knew the government wasn't going to help. We have to take what's ours. I am so busy working 84 hours a week I got no time or energy to make babies. Best way to protest wage slavery is by not reproducing sign of the horns. Not sure about exponentially, literally, but I agree. I'd also wonder if we're reaping the rewards of plastics and engineered chemicals via a lowered birth rate at this point. Been a long time coming. Then pile on childcare. If you work anything outside 8-4 you're just FC ked. You basically work to keep a job but the money is gone. I consider a smaller human population as a result of declining birth rates to be a huge positive. It's gonna suck for a bit while there is an inverted pyramid. But ultimately it's for the best to stabilize at a lower number of people. Agreed. We're going to have to accept that capitalism, particularly the way it's implemented, is an abysmal failure. It relies too much on underpaid non-paid labor to sustain the kind of economic growth that can sustain people at reasonable levels. It has created a perverted incentive structure that encourages corruption in governments and toxic social hierarchies. It literally feels like having kids is to abandon all your dreams and desires. I'd even say that wages have actually lowered instead of stagnated. At any given time we either are told we don't have enough resources to support the population or we have a shortage of people to earn them money. I'm starting to think these capitalists aren't on the up and up. I am 26 and have a 3-year-old. We currently live in a 1-bedroom that's only $700 a month. Cheapest by far in my area. I also make 20 hours. And I am still struggling paycheck to paycheck. I go negative at least once between paydays. It's so miserable out here. The governments of the world seem to be willing to do anything to make citizens reproduce. Besides make daily life more bearable to citizens. My grandparents raised 5 kids on one union auto worker's income. My mom went back to work after being a stay-at-home mother for years to pay for my and my siblings' college. We got out of school with less than $20,000 each in debt. My wife and I both work full-time in degree-required jobs and will have to take out $300,000 or more to get our kids through school. And we are lucky that we bought a house during the 2008 housing bust if my kids have kids. I don't know how they will manage. It is funny sad that I remember growing up and wondering if we would be the first generation since the 1930s to not be better off than our parents. TBH. Birth rate needs to go down. Another thing that is affected, and isn't always discussed, is how this severely impacts new upcoming foster parents. There is such an incredible need. In the United States, the number of children waiting to be adopted after their parents' parental rights were terminated as of the last day of the fiscal year of 2021 was 64,985. I don't think the future is bleak. The reality is people are voting for the same politicians who are basically employees of the wealthy. So we have to think of a different strategy on how we want to move this country. I live in the US. Forward in the future. My opinion is socialism. Capitalism is not working. Capitalism has the bottom 90 in this decades-long poverty cycle.